Okay.
I'd like to call the meeting to order with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Councilman Nita, Councilman Bill, Supervisor Runyon, here. Councilman Brown, here. Councilman Volusia.
Here.
Well, thanks for coming, all of you. This is the biggest crowd we've had so far. We're here today to discuss a local law regulating the short-term rentals in Thurman. And mostly, we're here to make sure that what we're doing fits the scheme of living here in Thurman. I'd like to find out how many people here own short-term rentals here in town. Oh, good. Okay, so what you have there is a copy of the rules and regulations that Warrensburg uses, primarily Chester uses. It's pretty stand forward for what a lot of the towns are using. And one thing I did want to let you all know that I'm realizing a lot of people aren't aware of is we do not receive occupancy tax based on how many short-term rental units we have here. That tax is paid to the county and used at the county. We receive $30,000 a year, just like every other town. And sometimes when there is a surplus, we might get a little extra, but it's not guaranteed. On the Occupancy and Tourism Tax Committee, Occupancy Tax and Tourism Committee, and this is my third year there. And I know that I was told at the last meeting, $30,000 is all we're going to receive this year. What they hand out to us is, something big like this that tells us where the money goes. They give an amount that's requested, the amount they suggest we vote on, and then we vote. And we are right now $55,500 coming out of reserves. So they're beyond what they budgeted for. So I know a lot of people think the more short-term rentals we have, the more OC tax we get, and that is not the case. I don't know how many of you had a chance to look at this, but there are certain things in here that, like a permit's required. That's pretty standard. And if you look, you have a copy of what the Warrensburg permit looks like. And it's pretty straightforward. It asks what property it's for, who the legal owners are, if there's anyone who's going to respond within 2 hours or 24 hours a day, in case you are an absentee short-term owner, how many rooms you sleep in there, how many sleeping rooms, the number of people who will occupy it based on Warren County Fire Prevention and Building Codes. We are all well and septic, and usually you have a septic inspection, and that determines how many people you can have. And they ask for a copy of that report. The certificate of authority to collect occupancy tax from the Warren County Treasurer's Office to make sure that you're registered there. And if you have your own set of rules and regulations for the rental, we would ask that you attach them. They should be posted for your tenants in a location usually near the front door or somewhere within where they can see them. The fact that off-street parking is provided for the amount of vehicles you'll be bringing. Garbage removal, that's one of them. The house number clearly visible from the street, that's pretty basic. And the provision that all the short-term rental laws would be complied with. And the permit should be posted within 5 feet of the main entrance of the listed property. It could be somewhere in there, I would imagine. I'm just going off of what Warrensburg uses, and we are trying to find out what do we want to change from their paperwork. And that quiet will be maintained between 10 and 7, which we already have a noise ordinance for that. And a list of all the neighbors notified within 150 feet of the rental unit, and that the county tax form registration is included. That's what it says. That's all there is to it. A lot of people don't think that the neighbors should be notified. From the questionnaire, though, most people that filled it out do think they should be notified, and there's a lot of reasons for that. If you're having damage done to your property and you're not there, wouldn't you want a neighbor to call?
Before we get into the details of the proposal of the rules, could you lay the groundwork of what is the catalyst for you even wanting to implement these rules?
The catalyst for implementing the rules is that we are having people who are concerned about certain things that happen at these short.
Do you have data to show what has happened and who's been complaining? What I have heard from the community is that there was an isolated incident that you all, it was a failure to be managed by law enforcement apparently because it went on for days and it was very disruptive. And as a host, I can assure you that it's not the intent for anyone to be disturbed by a neighbor that has a short-term rental. And just a moment. And so to jump to immediately we must enforce laws or rules and regulate according to strict parameters of a community that does not resemble Thurman, it just seems to be an overreaching situation where you're trying to implement things, and if you implement rules, then they need to be enforced. If the rules need to be enforced, then you have to pay someone to enforce them, right? So then you're going to have a debit to your budget to pay somebody to enforce them. Is there really a problem in Thurman? Where's the data to say it wasn't just that one raging party that people are upset about? Where's the data to say that short-term rental people are creating a problem criminally? Show me the data, please.
I don't really have to do that, show you data. What I get are phone calls and people that question me, people that ask me, people talk to me about trespassing, loose dogs, animals killing their, dogs killing their animals, and actually.
Can that happen at a full-time resident?
Yeah.
Can a dog wander over from a permanent resident and attack another dog?
Well, what I want to do is get through this, and then we'll have public discussion at the end of the meeting, because otherwise we'll never get through it.
Then I think it's appropriate to say what your goal is.
My goal is to regulate short-term rentals. Because I feel a need for it.
Because of one raging party, and then you're going to yank the livelihood of many families away?
Yank the livelihood?
Yes, with your restrictions, you're giving government oversight to allow the code enforcement officer to go in and say, we shut you down for 30 days, we don't like this, we're gonna penalize you. And you haven't even looked at the composition of the community or the composition of the short-term rentals that are out there. Are there owner occupants on site overseeing them, or are they just owned by people who are thousands of miles away and not paying attention? These things need to be considered before you say, let's have these rules.
Whether you're here or not, the rules are gonna be the same.
The need for rules needs to be looked at, and the people that are involved in short-term rentals need to be part of the conversation.
They have been. Some of them have reached out to me, and a lot of them that I've spoken to already comply with these rules. Other towns, they comply with the rules. We need to have rules. And one of the things that we want to do is limit the number of rentals that are available to have in this town.
And you said in last month's meeting that there are approximately 35 rentals in Warrensburg? Registered, in Thurman. And Warrensburg has 98. You're trying to adopt the rules. They're on 11 square miles of city. You're on 91 square miles. So you think there's a problem equal to the problem in Warrensburg here?
I'm not saying that there was.
We need to be regulated like Warrensburg.
Look, I'm not going to keep being
Excuse me, can I interject just for a moment? I think the meeting's starting to devolve very quickly, and I want to avoid that. I think it'd be good if we kind of come up with, I know we didn't do this ahead of time, but an agenda of what we intend to accomplish here at the meeting tonight.
I intend to accomplish coming up with the short-term rental regulation that we're going to submit to our attorney for review, and then go to the public hearing, and then adopt whatever it is we decide on. And I know that I would personally want to limit the number of rentals for many reasons. And what some people in here may not realize are the phone calls we receive from people as far away as California and Texas wanting to buy large tracts of land here. And what they are asking is, what is your laws regarding subdividing and short-term rentals? Because that is what they want to bring here. So if you look at just 2 miles on like the High Street area, there's a 35-acre piece of property that could be subdivided into 3-acre lots. Right down the street from that is another 60 acres that could be subdivided that people have called on. And right beyond that is another 60-acre piece. Then you go up to like Holmes Road and Frank King Road and look at the amount of short-term rentals that we can have. Now, if you look at, there was a town in Ohio someone told me about, they had 260 residences, and then they added on 1,100 short-term rentals. So my question is, what do you want the town to become?
I just want to put in, I understand the fear of what you're talking about with the land and anybody coming in. We are an APA here, okay? There are a lot of restrictions that APA is going to put into effect, and you also can put regulations on what you're looking to do as far as how much land can be done. So, I mean, if you're looking to control that, I think we should look at that as far as putting a law into effect or some restrictions as far as how much land is going to be allowed to do so, what it can be used for. And APA is not going to allow that to happen here. I can tell you that. I deal with them all the time. So that, I do understand your concern, but I do not see it happening. Because they're right now, depending on how much road frontage, how much wetland, how much is involved in the property, you can't even do 5 acres with APA.
Yes,
So
you can do 3.
Well, depending on where you're at and how much road frontage you have, that's a big restriction on that. I mean, if you have all that acreage, you gotta know what is involved. And you, as the town, can put the restrictions on that yourselves.
Right, that's what we're trying.
With the short-term rental thing, but you're not restricting land, is what I'm saying, the properties. You can put restrictions on that.
Land-wise, we have
Yes.
3-acre zoning. But the short-term rental part, that's what's drawing investors from all over the country.
And I agree, and I understand the fear of that. I'm not disregarding that at all.
And the more of them there are, the more competition for the short-term rentals we already have.
Well, good, competition is good, that's what society.
That makes everybody, responsible for their properties too.
Talk out loud without.
Okay, then I'll raise my hand.
You need to be, the board needs to give you permission to talk.
Could I ask that whenever anybody speaks, if you would just, when you address the board, would you state your name and where you're from so that this is being recorded so that we have it for the record and we know who we're talking to? There are a lot of faces here I don't recognize, so it would have to be helpful to us. And I also just want to say, just to clarify something, I mean, Deb's presented a proposed law based or modeled after the town of Warrensburg. The board's had some discussions over the past year about some of this stuff, but we haven't actually voted on anything, and there is not a consensus yet that we're actually going to adopt something. And I, for one, would like to hear from people, all the stakeholders on both sides of the issue tonight. First of all, I'd like to know what the issues are that we're trying to address, because I'd like to know, is there really a need for the regulations? If there are, to what extent? I've spent 33 years of my career working in a regulatory environment. I've seen both good and bad regulations. I've had to enforce them. I don't want us to go down that rabbit hole if we don't need to. So it would be helpful as we talk about this, if, number one, we don't talk over each other. If somebody else is talking, let them speak, and just be respectful so we can hopefully gather the information, make an informed decision, decide whether or not we actually need regulations. If we do, to what extent.
We need regulation. There's no way around it. That's unavoidable. The regulations are gonna happen. To what extent? I mean, when we get into these other people talking, these locals are very concerned about who's next door, what they're doing. They don't know. I'm telling you.
I don't dispute that.
Okay, all right. Now
I
let's
don't
move
dispute
on
that.
with our meeting.
Yeah, we're gonna.
Whitney's had her hand up here forever. Good.
As was mentioned, we've got the APA. That restricts us to an extreme amount as far as the amount of land we have, the type of land we have, and where the land's located. Yes, there's some 3-acre lots allowed, but there's also 40 acres, there's the wetland, and there's the forever wild that restricts us. I've been at the board meetings where the APA has approved a subdivision or approved a request by a landowner, and the board has to rubber stamp that approval. They've always done it, but you don't have to do it. So
Right.
even with the APA and the way things are right now, you don't have to approve them. To put on another layer of restrictions for the resident of Thurman, that's been one of the best things about living in the town, besides the neighbors that we've got, is the freedom to do what we want with our own property, and for you or any of your board members to tell me what I can and cannot do on my property. You've got no idea how infuriating that is. It's not your right, and it's not anybody else's right in this town to ask you to do that for me. I had a wonderful conversation with somebody that's for the restrictions, and she had no clue about the APA and the subdivision regulations at that point. So I'm wondering how many people in town that are up in arms even understand what the APA restrictions are with us.
Well, let me just,
And when I read this, and I see that the transient rentals are incompatible, what do you mean by incompatible? What's incompatible? Privacy? There's not gonna be anybody on top of me where I live. And currently, privacy, community, ambience, I mean, we've had people right next to us that were in the rental, we didn't even know they were there.
but what about the people who do? What about the people who have a short-term rental tenant in their garage and they don't know who to call? What about if something happens and there's a fight going on in a short-term rental and no one knows who to call to
What
tell
if it's a
them?
long-term rental?
It doesn't matter who it is.
Well, you've got long-term rentals in town too, and that, I mean, we just had a long-term rental guy arrested, and they're in the jail now to be extradited to Ohio. That was a long-term rental. There are not that many long-term rentals in town, but you have more problems with those than you have the short-term rentals.
We're not saying that we don't have problems with just anybody. It could be a resident who lives next door to you, but if you have a problem, you know who that person is. When you have a short-term rental, you have somebody in there that you don't know, who do you call?
911.
911.
That's what you do, you call 911.
So you really think unregulated, totally unregulated is the right way to go, where you can have 1,000 short-term rentals here, what is gonna happen then?
As long as you're not telling me what I can do with my home, yes.
So what you're saying, it's okay for you to do what you want, but not worry about your neighbors.
I don't,
That's the impression I'm getting. You're
I
not
would
worried about your
never-
neighbors.
I
What
would
about
never,
them?
I would never presume to
Apparently,
tell.
you're not, because
What-
you're
what-
telling me.
Wait a minute.
You gotta let her finish.
Yeah.
She's trying to respond to your question.
I would never presume to tell you what you can do on your property. And that's what you wanna do to me. I mean, you're saying that there's not that many restrictions. If, I don't plan on building anything on my property, but if I were to build something and I had to jump through these hoops, I mean, I'm shaking, I'm so upset about it. I'm shaking. And to compare us with Warrensburg, to even have this to give out today for us to look at, I mean, my mother brought me up, you don't jump into the river because Mary Jane did it. Well, we don't adopt the rules that Warrensburg did, you know, I mean, you don't do it because somebody else did.
This is just a draft, and what we're here to do is figure out how to alter it to our needs. And I don't think that it is wrong to want contact information. I don't think it's wrong to require that your septic's good enough to have the people
We've
there.
already got a septic zoning.
Yes.
We do.
Yes.
do.
Yeah, exactly.
I
Well, then it
recall
shouldn't be a
that, and I
problem.
can tell you it's not actually appropriate.
It may not be.
Well, then fix
It's
that,
a
don't
box.
make new
I
zoning.
realize that. So,
You know, I would never come to your property and tell you what you can or cannot do.
Oh, no,
It's
I
none of my
didn't say you
business.
didn't.
But you're not coming to my property and tell me how to live.
Okay, but what about your neighbors that are afraid when something goes wrong and they say they live alone? What do they do, Gary?
They can come next door and talk to me.
Oh, yeah,
I
they're
got a
going
phone
4
call.
miles up the road.
Wait a minute, I got a phone call from Sue Baker one night
Yeah,
that there was a car up on Crane Mountain in the parking lot. She was afraid to go up there, but she didn't know who it was. Caleb and I got in a truck, drove up there to see what
I've
the heck
helped
it
a lot
was.
of people out working for the highway.
So that's why you
Going
have,
out Brown
that's
Road.
why you have good neighbors.
Yeah.
But
What
we don't
happened?
need more layer on layer. And if I do have a problem, am I gonna call you? No. I'm gonna call 911.
Look at the laws that are in effect now, look at the zoning law for the septic, if it's not adequate, fix it. Look at the zoning laws, look at very closely what the APA has, let people know about them, I mean, they're there.
Yeah,
But
that's
they're
why
there,
they're on
they're
this
very
form, because they're already in existence. I mean, you can't build a house without getting a zoning for something.
Exactly,
All right,
exactly.
so why are you worried? Nobody's trying to tell you what you do with your property, we just wanna make sure that it's done the right way.
I don't wanna have to jump through your hoops, I don't wanna
Well,
have
if
to
you
jump.
build a new house, you still gotta have permits.
I know, they're already in place.
All right, then there should be no problem to give us a copy.
That's
That's
just
one more
another
layer,
layer.
that's one more government layer of telling me
So
what I
you,
have to do.
so you really believe that someone who comes in here and buys 100 acres should be able to put as many short-term rentals as APA
They
will
can't.
allow?
I'm-
They can't.
I don't, I'm not gonna tell them they can't. Do I like it? Do I want, I mean, we've got what, how many acres that
130-some
London
acres.
company owns, or the England
Oh,
company owns?
600 acres. That was
Somebody
Bob's
could
trees.
come there and buy that. It's behind us, it borders us. Would I like it? No. Am I gonna tell them they can't? No. I am not gonna tell somebody else what they can and cannot do on their property. If I wanted to do that, I'd live in Queensbury or at some gated community. But I don't. I live in Thurman with what we have now.
The property across the road from us, where our garden and my lumber yard is, you have to have 40 acres to build one single-family dwelling. 40 acres. Where our house sits, you gotta have 7. That's a lot of land.
Mhm.
So,
That's a lot of land.
question I have is, are you trying to restrict development? Obviously, somebody can come and develop however many within APA regulations, right?
Right.
That's the APA regulations. So if, let's just say there's 100 units on some large property that somebody's gonna develop, how do we know they're all gonna be rental units? What, are you trying to regulate that as well?
I just
mean,
know the phone calls
you
that
can't-
I am receiving are a lot of people that want to come here, they wanna know what our rules are, so, because they wanna come and develop, they wanna subdivide and develop, and that's what they're
Develop.
telling me.
But is that, mean they're all gonna be rentals?
That's what their goal is, they wanna know what our short-term rental rules are, so they know what to do if they wanna continue to purchase the land.
So if somebody wanted to put in a small hotel someplace, that's a business, they're putting in a hotel, those are short-term rentals. Is that gonna, it's all gonna fall into some other kind of regulation, right?
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think your point, Lou, is that if you're talking about somebody subdividing property or developing it in some way, then we should have zoning regulations to address that, not short-term rental.
Right.
You don't try to backdoor
No.
control of zoning through
Right.
short-term rental regulation. I think that's his point,
Yeah.
so, which goes back to what I originally said. I think we need to identify if there are issues with short-term rentals, what are they, and how do we best address them? Because we have a noise ordinance, so if there's a problem with disorderly neighbors, we have a noise ordinance, we can have our zoning officer or code enforcement officer call the sheriff's department and address the noise. I guess I'm asking, what other issues do we have with short-term rentals that we're trying to address through these regulations? I'm not opposed to very modest regulation, and I also would like to know from the short-term rental owners here, specifically what in the Warrensburg law that we're talking about here, what do you find so onerous? Because I worked in a regulatory environment where regulations were far more onerous than this is. So I guess I'm kind of curious, what about this do you find challenging or difficult or, problematic?
For me, it's knowing who they are, because we don't know. A lot of people said they weren't contacted. What list do we have? I have one name on my list of people who gave me a phone number to call, one.
I get that, but what's the problem that we're trying to address that we need to know who they are? I mean, if if there's something happening at a property, I think like Gary said, you can call 911 if there's something that's, you know, inappropriate going on there. You don't have to call a property owner, you can call 911.
Trespassing is trespassing.
Yeah, so, I guess I'm
What
still.
did they say when we had that thing, that shindig? If there's no zoning or no code enforcement, they cannot do anything.
We didn't have a noise ordinance,
That's right.
which we now have.
So there's a lot of things that they might not come forward with.
If, once we had the noise ordinance, that took care of 99% of the problem with that
Not so
incident.
much.
I'm not
That
sure what
incident-
other things
That
happened.
incident made me.
I mean-
So I'm Leslie Rowe, I'm the daughter of Lila Walter, who has been a long-term resident, probably sold a lot of new property back in the day. Our family's been here since the Civil War. I'm not an outsider, I do own a short-term rental, I do run a legit business, and, the rules, I mean, we can get into that, but one thing I wanna bring up is that you mentioned that you're not suggesting you adopt Warrensburg rules, and last month's meeting in February, at the end of the meeting, you actually said, we want to use this as a guideline and add some to it, so you're,
To modify it.
no, you said add some to it. And so it's like you're seeking to add these layers of rules. We just want the freedom to run a business. There are folks who can live in Thurman. Let's talk about locals, because you're trying to scare people with these outsiders coming in and buying up the land. There are people who are living below the poverty level and need to supplement their social security to pay their taxes. And if they're running a short-term rental on their property, it's good for them. And you're gonna enforce restrictions or ask to limit the number. There are people who have planned their retirement around coming to this area. They bought a house maybe, or a property a year ago or 10 years ago, and they're planning to move in 2 years, and all of a sudden you say, sorry, we're capping that at X amount or X%, and now that takes away their ability to have a livelihood in retirement. If there is a young family who's struggling and they don't want to put their children in daycare, they can have a short-term rental and supplement their income, and then those kids don't go in daycare, they don't have to go to Albany or Glens Falls for work. That's a wonderful thing. It hurts the citizens when you tell them you can't have this type of business on your property. It is hurting the community. You're trying to make it out to be like this is this far away, rich people problem, buying up our land, doing things. APA has so many guidelines. If they make these phone calls and say, can we buy this land, or what's your short-term rental policy? And they're looking at a large tract of land, you can guarantee once they hit the APA layer, it's gonna shut them down. They're going like, oh yeah, we're limited to this amount. So this is going to get out of hand. It's not going to happen. In the free enterprise, if you have crappy rentals, there's a way to rate the rentals online, and the guests, if you get 2 or 3 bad reviews, your reservations drop. You are out of business. And if same for a host, like if you reported things and you can deplatform people pretty easily on it. So it's like let them compete because the bad ones are going to fall away. The ones that are mismanaged are going to fall away. And if you want to enact restrictions on people, don't isolate short-term rentals. If you want to go check people's septics and their whatever, that should be for all citizens. Are you concerned about the safety of all citizens in Thurman, or you're just taking this particular group and saying, we want to, put these rules on you and we're going to put you under critique, but everyone else, we're not so concerned about. It should apply to everyone. If you're concerned for the safety, you need to be concerned for the safety of all the citizens, not these people that are trying to make a living off of running a business, a legit business on their property.
The next 3 weekends are Maple weekends. There's gonna be thousands of people that come through this town. Most of them are not local, I guarantee you. So, as far as knowing who's here, there's no way to know it. The only thing you can do if you have a problem is you have to somehow react to it. But to anticipate a problem, it's not gonna happen. Now, the experiences that all of us have, including Randy, with outside people coming in and buying products from us and bringing money into the town has been positive. I think of all the years that we've done this, I had the sheriff stop one time at our house. that somebody had parked with their wheels on the outside of the white line. And he asked, please stay on the other side of the white line. That's the only incident that I know of. So you have the 3 weekends of Maple, you have our event in June, which draws several hundred people, and then you have the Fall Farm Tour. We also do a free store here, twice a year. People come from all over the place. Never been an incident. I don't think there's ever been an incident up at Veterans Field with the concerts that I have ever heard of. So, to me, that's not a concern. You can call the sheriff patrol.
I'm sure you all know, we have a 5-star rental on our property. We've been listed #1 for Maryland and Maine. I've never had an issue on my property. My property's kept clean, it's in order all the time. I don't wanna jump through these hoops, I'll be honest with you. I understand what you're doing, and I'm on both sides of the fence with this, because I'm also worried about the person who's gonna put the rental place behind me. My rental was affected by that rave. I had people there trying to sleep, they couldn't sleep all night, partying all night long. It's unreasonable. But rather than go after everybody with a rule system, why not something else, a compromise, a strike system, a set of rules that we live by? You do this, you abide by this, you're okay. You screw up, you break the rule, you're either fined or you get 3 strikes and you're no longer allowed to do it. No one is getting punished then, you have to live up to it. I'm a responsible owner, I live on my property, I take care of my property. When I have guests on my property, I'm there.
Yeah.
10 o'clock at night, if it's not quiet, I'm not sleeping, I'm shutting it down. You know, I'm there, and I shouldn't be punished for something that's going on from somebody up the road from me. I'm not gonna mention any names, who doesn't pay any attention or doesn't care, who's just in it for the money. I'm doing it to pay my taxes. I'm doing it to provide a little extra income for my retirement.
Yeah.
And I don't wanna go through all this. I don't wanna be inspected, I don't wanna be dealing with this.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
I mean, you're saying 3 strikes and that's the issue.
Just hypothetically.
There's enforcement in that model law, but how does the board regulate those people that are causing the problem without regulating the rest of the people? How do you
We're
do
talking
that?
about an officer, correct? You're gonna have somebody, an officer here in the town, you're
We
gonna
have a
appoint
code
somebody.
enforcement officer.
Okay, so many complaints come through, they're gonna call the town hall, okay? Your officer goes out and investigates it, because obviously there's a lot of neighbors that don't like each other. Somebody's gonna call up and say, you know, so-and-so, I don't like them next door because they're renting out. The officer has to go and make sure it's a legitimate complaint, #1, okay? If it is a legitimate complaint, it goes to the board, it gets handled. Okay, this is a level A complaint, okay? Somebody came in, they were up to 10:30 at night, the radio went off, okay? Issue a warning, then a fine. And then, you know, 3rd strike, hey, we have to sit down and talk about this. You're either gonna straighten this out or we're closing you off.
I think that's what that law
But we
does.
can't do that without,
We have to have regulations to do what you're saying.
I agree, that's what I'm saying. We need to make regulations. I'm saying that. But all the inspections and all this stuff, I don't wanna go through that. I don't think anybody here wants to deal with that.
Orange County, you gotta have it. If you build anything, you
So-
gotta have inspections.
I understand that. We've already done it.
You have
It's
to,
already done.
there's no way around that. That's an unwritten rule, yeah.
Yes, that's correct, because we have people down by the river that are dumping their feces and stuff in the river, and I get that.
Yeah,
so what
that's-
you're saying
yeah.
is we should have certain restrictions, like the 3 strikes and whatever, and take out the things that are like too imposing, like the septic restriction and, you know, cause that would be
That's
through the
fine.
county.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's building on our properties, whatever's done has already been inspected. Do we have to go through this again? Do we have to, you know, deal with all that again? Do we have to deal with all the fines and stuff? Or
Can I address that? Because that was, I spent most of my career dealing with wastewater. The concern with that is when somebody takes a piece of property and they change it from like a single family use where it's 2 or 3 bedrooms to suddenly they're advertising it for 16 people. And now the septic system isn't adequate.
I totally agree with that.
That's the concern, and I think that's where this process brings Warren County Code Enforcement Office in to make sure what the maximum occupancy is of a residence, to make sure that the septic isn't overloaded or there isn't a fire hazard or safety hazard. I think correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like what you're asking for is for us to come up with some regulations that say you can and can't do certain things, but not require a permit application process and all these other things. So you don't have to jump through all the hoops, as long as you're law abiding, then
Exactly.
everything's
Exactly.
okay. Okay.
I'm just trying to keep the peace, but you know, I understand your point. I too I've worked in the septic system business for years myself. I get it, I understand what you're saying with it, you know, but there's gonna be that one place that has, maybe they put a portage on outside their place and it's clean, you know? It's cleaned every week. They have an outdoor shower, you know? Now you invite the county in to inspect it and they say, oh, well, you can't do that. That's against the law, you know? So where does it end? You know, where does it end here, and where is it, you know, somewhere along the line, we have to have a reasonable balance here, you know? There's so many people that are putting 16, 20 people in a house. I don't let more than 4 in a place. I wanna be able to go over there and manage it. I don't wanna have to go over and tell a whole gang of people, hey, you gotta quiet down, because I'm looking to get hurt. You know, I keep 4 people, 4 adults in my place. I never have a problem. Never, ever have a problem.
But you're there.
Yeah, I'm
You're
there.
there.
And I get that too, but you know, I don't agree with these people coming in and buying up large tracts of lands that live over here on the other side of the country or wherever. However, if they have somebody here that they're paying who is, you know, creditable to maintain the property and to uphold the law on it, that's a different story.
That's one of the things in here, is to have somebody available within a 2-hour time period to address it.
Absolutely.
So certain things you're okay with.
And that creates jobs for the town, people here that can actually look
Yeah.
over the property.
So there are a lot of short-term rentals that are doing everything perfectly, and they make sure they're fixing them up, they're on top of it. Some of them have cameras, they can watch what's happening on the property.
Absolutely.
But then there's others that like allow people to shoot, they allow people to trespass. That was another big issue, was the trespassing, because if you have a short-term rental and you have property all around you, you know where your border is. But if you're renting a short-term rental out in the middle of the woods and you don't know where your property line is, they're trespassing, and then when someone says, hey, you're trespassing on my property, they've been told, it's the park, I can go wherever I want. That's one of the complaints we've had.
If they
So-
can't manage their property, they shouldn't have the right to rent it.
And I post my
Bottom
property
line.
3 signs every year, I check all the posted signs. If you walk on my property, you know you're walking on it.
Yeah, and that's a good thing.
I have signs every 20 yards.
I think what Jim's hit on is, and this is the challenge the board is facing, is how do we address the property owners that aren't properly, the short-term rental owners, that are not properly managing their property, that are causing quality of life issues for residents and property owners here in town, without overburdening the rest of the short-term rental owners. And that's the challenge we face.
Yeah,
That's,
that's the
you know,
challenge. Yeah.
Deb has proposed that we model our law after Warrensburg, and I'll go back to my original question. What parts of this law are so onerous that short-term rental owners don't wanna have to deal with this, but yet how do we have something that has teeth in it to address the property owners that are not responsible? There's somebody in the back there, you had your hand
Yeah,
up for a
Duff
while.
Wilkers out there. As far as like some of these inspections, I mean, you know the people that are taking a house and they put a Airbnb in a garage and they have the same septic system that they had, but to go in and have to inspect everybody's system. When the house was built, anybody that has a regular house that's renting it out, when that house was built, they had a CO, everything was inspected. Also have to remember that on these short-term rentals, it's short-term, they're only in there like a weekend, but you got people who are living in a house, that are living there, and the septic use is tenfold more
Mhm.
Yes,
than it is for living there full-time than it is on a rental, on a
understood.
rental purpose.
So do you think what we need more is zoning
Yeah,
compared to making it a short-term rental issue?
that.
Maybe what we need is planning and zoning, and we don't have that.
Mhm.
I'm Tammy Creedon. I am a short-term rental owner. Been doing it for a couple years. I've come to the area. I live in Queensbury. I have cameras outside. We monitor them, we clean them. We've really brought, I feel, value to the area. The neighbors, all the properties that we've done, we've rehabbed, we've brought the value up for most
Yeah.
people. What I mean with this is, I understand what you wanna do, and I get it. But you're punishing the people that are doing everything right, the ones that are here today, trying to say, hey, we're here, what can we do? How can we regulate the people that are not following the rules?
Exactly.
So I do understand what you're trying to do, but the ones that are following the rules are the ones that are getting punished. And the ones that aren't following the rules, I get you have to, but with us, I'm registered for Warren County. You
Right.
can get a hold of me, you know, you have a contact number. I'm registered, I've given you my information, I've done everything as far as neighbors, I've done the right thing. And I feel right now that we are kind of being punished for the people that are not doing it correctly. So is there some way that we can do this where everybody's happy, that we are helping the area? I'm here because I don't wanna come in here, I mean, I'm not an out-of-towner as far as I'm concerned, I live in Warren County, I'm in Queensbury. I don't need to come to Thurman and try to do this, but what I wanna do is honor your town, do what you want me to do, represent you, and help you with this.
Yeah.
I do, I really do, but I feel like you're, right now, with the short-term rental situation, you're punishing the people that are doing it right. How can we do it where you have to get control of these people that are putting, people in their garages and letting the septic go into the thing? That's what we need to get control
Right,
of.
how though?
Regulations, you've gotta do zoning, you've gotta do it with code enforcement.
I think the unfortunate fact of life is that most regulations stem from people that do things wrong, and yes, they
Correct.
affect all the people that do it right.
Right.
That's the sad fact of
Victoria?
life.
So I'm very neutral ground, and I'm listening to everything, and I'm just gonna throw this out there and, as an idea, because everybody's saying, how can we do it without upsetting anybody else? What if the people that are already short-term rental owners are grandfathered into not having to get permits, but still have some sort of, violation system? And if somebody violates their stuff, then, they have to be inspected by the code enforcement or whatever, and it's filed. And then maybe after so many complaints, there is something after that, but then anybody new with the stuff ends up with, maybe having to get a permit or just say, hey, I was looking to do this. It may be grandfather in the people that are already here, so they're not already feeling like they're being singled out. And then there's no way to enforce something that doesn't exist, so obviously there would have to be some sort of written regulation, so, ignorance can't be insurance of, oh, I didn't know, so it's not my problem, or nobody told me, so this time doesn't count, so that if, it's written out and if everybody's already following it, then it's not a problem, and it would be on a complaint basis to implement things. But that would also be written out, so they can't say, well, I didn't know if I didn't do this, that I wouldn't be able to do this without having extra paperwork.
I think the complaint process that you're talking about could be part of just zoning and planning. And it'd be for everyone, not just for short-term rentals, but if we had that rule for everyone, then anyone who had a complaint could have some type of remedy for it. I mean, that would probably work, right?
Well, how about this? How about people who are in the Airbnb business and are doing it right? It's obvious that you're here and you're concerned about it. Set your own standards, what you expect. Now, I heard Jim just say that the fiasco around High Street disturbed his customers. That's not a standard he wants,
Right, right.
because that's gonna hurt his business.
It hurt a lot of them.
You don't want things that adversely affect your business. So it would seem to me that the Airbnb business people who are running legitimate businesses should get together and set their own standards of what they expect each of them to do and live to that standard. Now, we got a neighbor up the road, he bought Barbara Keen's place, he turned it into a really nice place. He goes only through Airbnb. So, and he does stay there. So he's assured that whoever is renting his place, that they've been vetted by Airbnb. And I haven't seen the rules and regulations, but I understand
They're
it's
pretty
pretty
strict.
stringent.
They're pretty strict.
As well as VRBO, same thing.
Yep, same thing. There's rules, you can tell those people they no longer be on your property, they control a lot of things, you can report these people, it's pretty,
If they break the rules, we have the right to throw them out of the property. It's just,
Absolutely.
it's
Jim,
our
that's a
responsibility to be
question.
there.
How come it's okay for Airbnb to have rules, but not the town of Thurman? That's what I'm hearing.
Because
It's
that's
not,
your,
it's
that's
not
your
about the
option.
rules.
That's what I'm hearing, it's okay for them.
It's not the
but
rules,
our
Eddie, the
town.
point is that they're vetted before they go through.
So, we don't know they are. We have to have regulations and some sort of regulation to guarantee that all of our people, not just the short-term rentals, and we're not trying to stop them, we're just trying to get along and get some regulations so most of our people feel safe, and there's nothing wrong with that.
We're not disagreeing with you.
Michelle?
I'm Michelle Probilski. I'm the other half of the short-term rental here. The problems that are coming in, there's a well-known owner that owns several properties in Warrensburg and Thurman and in other areas that have caused problems in Warrensburg and in Thurman. We won't mention any names. Are these where the complaints are coming from?
No, not just.
Not just. So there are other complaints.
Yes, trespassing is a big one, dogs loose is a big one.
Yeah, but that one complaint made history.
This
That one complaint on High Street made history.
Well, yeah, I still get teased about it.
I'm not done yet. I just
Okay, go
wanted
ahead.
to just finish. You know, I just want to say that we're very responsible owners of short-term rental. We have done long-term rental before. We will never do that again
Mhm.
because there's less rules that we can regulate a long-term rental than we can a short-term rental. Well, it is because we self-regulate
Right,
Well,
by picking who's going to be on our property, what
Yeah.
time they're going to be on our property, and we regulate it.
yeah.
This area was founded on great camps, tourism, and everything else, and we have to be responsible for what we bring into this town. But you can't take the tourism industry away from people making a living too. We just have to do it responsibly. Responsibly to our town, our people, and our, our nature. It's very important, but we should do it carefully.
We're just trying to figure out how.
Mhm.
How?
You've talked about dogs being loose, and you've talked about the sewer. We've got a dog warden, and we've got a code enforcement for the sewer. So those are two things that we've already got. We don't need anything else. And now you're talking about live in fear or not live in fear. Who's living in fear and what has caused the fear?
I'm not
Other
gonna mention any
than
names.
people saying, oh my God, they're coming here. What? I mean, I know of different criminal acts that have happened in town. I mean, I can go through the ones that I can remember since I've been living here. They're all local people. I don't know of anybody that was a short-term renter that committed a criminal act. And if they're trespassing, call the sheriff. Put up no trespassing signs if that's what you want. I mean, you're looking at zoning for all of us to protect a few people that have called you to complain.
I don't think that 25 out of how many we have, 26.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
There's 25 people that want regulations on it, out of 26 applications.
I didn't fill out one of those, I wasn't about to bother, you know how I feel, but so I mean, how many other people do you fill them out?
I'm Shay Barnaby from
Oh,
West
hi.
Street. I'm sorry, Brian, what are the 25 people out of
The
20?
questionnaire that came back,
Oh, questionnaires are only, yeah, those obviously were filled out. We can't.
we just
go on
need to know
questionnaires or polls,
how
but
to address.
I would like to, I would like to suggest, first of all, I agree with everybody. We can't let a few bad apples affect the livelihoods of those of us who are doing it responsibly. And I think the thing that's most, you had mentioned this, or the egregious, or the things that are upsetting, are just like the redundant inspections. I believe that those are certainly not necessary to call out for short-term rentals. The fees that are going to be, that are suggested to be imposed, I mean, that's what's the most egregious, offensive, I forget, you used a really good word before. But if we all had time, I mean, would we be able to have a meeting with us all where we all come prepared, maybe with the suggested, like maybe even on slips of paper with our suggested regulations? I would personally like to suggest that no regulation exists unless it's affecting somebody else. whenever we get into regulations, and you mentioned this as well, it's a very slippery slope, where now we're being controlled by the government as opposed to actually protecting other people. And I think any regulation that's imposed should be to protect neighbors, Brownie, which you mentioned, which was fantastic, to protect neighbors, to protect people who aren't involved. But a regulation for the sake of a regulation that doesn't protect other people is silly. So if we were to just set a meeting where we all come, if we had a circular table, it would be better. Come sit around in a circle, like romper room, and come with pieces of paper, put all the pieces together with our suggested regulations and go through them one at a time.
I love your idea, and I will make it a circle the next time. No, I'm serious,
Just like
because
romper room.
who else would want to, who else should be the one that decides it than the ones who are doing it right? That's the way I feel.
So reach out to them.
Hmm?
I see a few Airbnb people here, I don't see all
Well, they should all come
of
then.
them. And so invite them, get their input, see what.
The problem is I don't know who they are. I don't know who
This
they
from the
are.
county?
I do. My name is Joe DeLuca, and I live here. I'm gonna agree with Jimmy. I think that strike thing, 1 strike, 2 strike, 3 strike. Hey, listen, we need to have conversations. Come sit down. You have a rental here? The cops have been there 9 times in 2 weeks. We need to do something, straighten it up, or we're gonna not have you have a rental here. Can't be
But that would be
disturbing,
a- that would be a-
can't be
that has to be a
disturbing the
law.
neighbors. I think it's a very wise thing to do. 'Cause
I
once-
think though, to achieve what you're saying, we have to have a regulation.
I got you, but this is very intrusive. This needs to be less intrusive for the people who own the B&Bs and the vacation.
That's
When you say that's intrusive, could I ask you specifically, just because I'm curious, what do you find so?
The septic inspections, the fire inspections, and how many,
I think if unless I misread this, that's only when you first apply the first time,
correct.
you have it done one time, and then you're good. You don't have to keep having it done every year, or every 3 years when you renew, or anything like
Well,
that.
I assumed it was done every 3 years, every.
What if you're already established?
Okay, what if you're already
And if you
established?
already did it, it shouldn't matter, you already have it. And I think that the 35 that we already know about that are registered at the county have already done what they have to do.
Well, I gotta correct you on that, because I don't think that's actually the case. When you say registered at the county, that's registered for occupancy tax purposes. That's not registered for code enforcement purposes. I called the code enforcement office today, and just so everybody understands this, I specifically asked them, you know, what their role is in towns like Warrensburg, because Warrensburg has it in their application and they have it in their regulation. And yes, they do inspect them for when they initially apply. They set the occupancy levels, and I don't know to what extent they inspect the septic. I'm not sure about that, because I didn't specifically ask about that as an oversight. But I did ask them, what do they do in a town like Thurman, where we currently have no regulations? They do nothing, zero. So there's no, code enforcement has no involvement in our town unless we pass regulation.
Right,
And I personally don't see the need for annual or every 3-year inspections or anything like that. I think we're talking, the proposal that's here, and I'm not taking a position pro or con at this point in time, but the proposal that's in front of us is a one-time inspection to set the occupancy level, to make sure the building's in compliance with, you know, fire safety, things like that, and hopefully look at the septic to see whether it's adequate for the number of people that are gonna be occupying the building. So I think that's what we're talking about.
I just had a quick question. Are those inspections required for long-term rentals as well?
I think they should be.
Anytime you.
They're not. They are
Yeah,
not.
so again, that may be a redundant thing because that's required for CO, but.
I don't know the answer to that, and I don't know if they are in fact.
For CO.
Maybe for CO they are.
Initial.
Okay, somebody's saying yes, they are,
Yeah.
so.
But you're assuming someone has a CO. What about the people that are renting, they're not
How
an
do they live there
Airbnb,
without
and they
CO?
don't have a CO?
How do you live there
You don't
without
want-
CO?
You don't go on the tax roll unless there's a CO
You
on
gotta
it.
have it has to be there. That's
What do
the
you think
problem,
about that?
that's the piece that you need to be addressing. The people that don't have COs are not paying taxes, they're not on the tax roll, they are the ones that are not following the rules.
And there's
Exactly.
many other rules they're not following that we could get them on for those rules
That's-
instead.
This is, you know, you're talking regulations, they're breaking that regulation right there.
Yep.
You
You're
can't, you're not, you should not even be in that home. You condemn them, you shut them down, they're done. You can't be in a house does not have a CO.
Only
It's
if
the
you
law.
have a rule, only if you have,
Warren
you have.
County
No,
doesn't
she,
allow
she's
it.
she's saying there is a rule that they have, there's state law that you
State
have to
law,
have
you
a
have to
CO.
have a CO.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
cannot live in a residence without it.
And it's be very hard to inspect the septic on a short-term rental because it's only people there on a weekend. You might have 12 people in that house, which has adequate bedrooms for the 12 people, but,
Yeah.
you know, it's gonna be hard to do that.
Yeah,
because
you can't
You could
regulate
have a
that.
whole family living in there year-round that, so.
With any subsurface
It's
system,
very
it's
hard.
always a challenge to find out what's in the ground, unless you have plans from when it was constructed, and then you can open up the septic tank and the distribution box. You're limited in what you can do, but coming from my background, dealing with wastewater, I personally feel it could be an issue because I do know of instances where, what I mentioned before, where you have a 3-bedroom home, suddenly is being advertised for 16
Right.
people. That puts a
But that's
little
gonna put
load.
you in a problem that owns that property, because then you're gonna have it backed up in your basement, you're the ones, as an Airbnb owner, you're going to be the one that's going to have to deal with that major problem.
We have
Well,
our
it's not-
septic pumped, we have our septic pumped every year. We
Right.
don't need to, but I don't wanna get that phone call at 11 o'clock at night saying that my septic's backed up for any reason. So for the amount to have Hometown come in for $300 a piece to pump them, it's
Yeah.
peace of mind and
Once again, you're a responsible short-term rental owner.
But the people that aren't have to follow these rules as far as septic's concerned, and they have to follow the CO rules, that's statewide.
There are many homes in Thurman that do not have a CO,
You
because
cannot,
they're
they
old
shouldn't,
homes.
how are they living there?
You don't need a CO to live in an old home. You need a
Are they
CO
paying
to build a
taxes?
home.
Are they paying taxes?
Of
I
course
think
they are.
I think he's talking about existing homes people been living in
Oh,
for
okay,
years
I'm sorry.
versus,
So if you build something new, of course you have to have a CO.
Yes.
You have to have a CO to sell it, because the bank won't even look at it.
keep in mind, we only recently created the position of code enforcement officer, and we have very limited regulations that he's tasked to enforce. The noise ordinance being one of them.
Well, I
Most
get
of our
confused.
code enforcement work is done through Warren County.
Right,
And it's, as far as septic part of that goes, that's very limited. We can talk about that sanitary code later, I can fill you in on that.
I get confused because like, I sell real estate, so
Yeah.
I know he's exactly right. I couldn't sell a house that didn't have a CO. The bank wouldn't do it, nobody would buy it, it would be condemned, pretty much is what they say, you can't. So that's where I'm very confused on how these people are doing these things that are not following rules.
now that you have a noise ordinance in place, that's gonna fix on a lot of these issues and probably a lot of complaints that you're getting as well, which you didn't have, and we know that one incident up on High Street keeps coming up.
And back up.
You know, and you've got 25 people that filled out these questionnaires saying that they have a problem. Well, my question is, how come they're not here tonight? They're all here is concerned, everybody that's here is concerned and wants to give their input and talk to people. and-
It's the only incident we've had in 20 years of me living here.
Right.
But where are those people that are concerned?
They're not that concerned, I guess.
Actually,
Maybe they have
Not
kids.
Actually, there's always been a noise ordinance called disturbing peace. It's been around for 100 years.
Yeah, the problem is when we called, I say we, when somebody in town called the sheriff's department to complain about the noise on High Street last year, the response from the sheriff's department, allegedly, it wasn't part of the conversation, was they couldn't do anything
They
because there was no noise ordinance. So there was nothing they could do.
They couldn't do
They
anything.
threw their hands up. That's why the board adopted a noise ordinance,
Yeah.
so.
The health and safety issues that are being brought up, they should be issues that are concerning for all residents. So if you're going to go, wow, this is really affecting our population, but it's the short-term rental people, aren't you concerned about the health and safety of, you should have the septic inspections for every household in Thurman. You should be concerned about everyone's dog, not maybe a visitor brought a dog. I mean, it's like you're isolating this group of people. I called Warren County Code Enforcement also about the fire safety inspections and so forth. And I was told by them that when they set the occupancy, I asked, how do you set the occupancy per bedroom? And part of it is a square footage situation. So for two people to be in a one-bedroom house, per short-term rental standards, you have to have 120 square feet. So some of these hunting, fishing cabins, old vacation homes, they might be a 10 by 10 bedroom. So now, if we have to abide by Warren County's code enforcement, they come out and look and they go, oh, your bedroom's 10 by 10, it needs to be at least 12 by 10 to comply with 120 square feet. They're not gonna issue you the go-ahead, so you're not gonna get approval from them. That effectively shuts down these people that have places like we have one-bedroom cabins. They were built in the 1930s, so they're not lavish by any means. They're not going to be 14 by 14 or whatnot. So that's one of the items in here that I object to, is that when you get another layer of oversight, bring in the county, and they're going to well hem and haw about this, and well, we need this here and that. Well, you can't have two people in that bedroom because it's 100 square feet, not 120 square feet. Now you effectively have to post it on VRBO and Airbnb as occupancy 1. How many people go on vacation? There are some single people that go on vacation, but the majority, it's usually 2 people at least that go on vacation.
You've made some good points, and I appreciate it. I took a note on one of the things you said. One of the things I wanted to address, though, is in the absence of regulations, Warren County Code Enforcement is not setting the occupancy level. So if somebody has a short-term rental in Thurman and we have no regulations, Warren County Code Enforcement's not involved in that at all. That's what they told me today when I called them. So in order to set that occupancy limit, we need regulations in order to get them, loop them into the process. That's, but having.
But hosts don't want their Airbnbs filled up. Like, if I have a 2-bedroom house, I don't want 10 people in there.
Responsible ones.
I said it.
Yeah.
I said, but the irresponsible ones are gonna have their places demolished. You know, if people are doing wrong, they're gonna fade out. They're gonna fade out. The cream rises to the top. So the good ones are gonna stay in business, and the ones that are doing it in an unsavory manner, or a way that disrupts the neighborhood, or the way that is unsanitary, or criminal, or whatever you wanna say, they are going to be pushed out by the competition.
I don't disagree with you. I have personal experience with one where it happened along those lines. But the problem is the quality of life for the people that live next door to it is affected for the duration of the time it takes for that one to be squeezed out.
I also called the sheriff's office, Warren County Sheriff's Office, and had a nice little discussion with them. And I said, I don't know the incident because I wasn't here, but I know it was like a rager and it was disturbing to a lot of people. Would you have responded without a code enforcement officer being first notified that there's a problem? They said, absolutely. They have a substation in Warrensburg. They would, whoever was on patrol would come investigate, and if there was a problem, they would shut it down. That is a law enforcement deficit if they didn't. If no one called the law, or the law came out and said, this isn't really a party, no, there's no drugs, there's nothing illegal. This is not a short-term rental issue, this is a law enforcement issue.
But
They did call the law. I'm sorry, Deb, I didn't mean to talk over you. They did call the law. The problem was at the time we didn't have a noise ordinance. We now have that.
But they
So
said they
that-
would respond even without a noise ordinance.
They did. They
But
did,
they
but
can't do anything.
they threw their hands up and said there's nothing that they could enforce against because we had no noise ordinance.
they drove through here all night long because of that.
So,
All they could do was drive by.
we now have a noise ordinance, and that probably would take care of most of the problem with that particular incident.
Right.
And
If there
also-
are other problems that cross some criminal threshold, I don't know of them. I mean, I've heard allegations of drug use and other things like that. I'm sure that if the sheriff's department witnessed that or had evidence of that, they would have addressed that. But that's not something we can address through short-term rental
And the amount of
regulation
people
anyhow.
would have been limited
So-
too. The amount of people there would have been limited.
If we had short-term rental
But
regulation.
it basically became a campground.
Yes.
But basically, regardless, there's gonna
But
have
that's
to be
one
some.
thing, that is not, and that happened one time, that is not this. I really like your idea of the short-term rental owners deciding what they would like to see. How would you like to come up with something that helps you stand out from the rest who are doing it wrong? Because it seems like all of you people are doing it perfectly right. You're doing everything right. But there's also the ones who don't. So you talk about the 3 strikes you're out. Well, how do we tell somebody what the 3 strikes are? That's the problem.
We come up with a rule system, we appoint an officer, the officer gets called, the neighbors are gonna
Right
call.
here, Jim, this is the rules and regulations. This,
Yeah, but
these
they're
are the ones I'm gonna stick by. I'll tell you right now.
Yeah, but they're
I'm not gonna be swayed that one way or the other.
Yeah, but some of these maybe be a little bit too strict for what we're
Well,
doing.
no, the people here are fine. I didn't complain with them. It's, but,
I know.
it's too much.
They should be here. They should be here.
Who's they, who do you mean?
Anybody that has these problems with short-term rentals. I would love, is there anybody here that has a problem with short-term rentals right now?
I would say I'm middle ground.
Okay, but
Yeah, I don't think that people don't exist that have problems with it.
Are those-
and I don't think that they can all afford to come.
Excuse me, Eddie, those rules that you're pointing out to me, are they here in this, what we got passed out here today?
Yeah, that's what he's
Okay.
talking about.
I'm sorry, I haven't had a chance to read them because I just got them here, I can't read that fast and take it all in,
Yeah,
but
all I'm saying is if everyone is doing things the way they're supposed to be doing, they shouldn't have to be concerned about a permit or anything. It should be, you guys are, I'm not saying you're
no,
not.
I get that, I'm not
But
arguing
we just
with you.
need proof and after that, it's fine. But we still need to put a limit on how many is in our little town.
Sure.
yeah.
Okay.
I can briefly tell you what they are, there's like 8 of them, okay? So, to get the permit, it's the name, address, telephone number, and email addresses of every person who has ownership, so we know who the owners are. Name, address, and telephone number of a local primary contact person who should be available during the entire time it's being rented, just a contact person, so we know who to call. Maximum occupancy requirement for the short-term rental as determined by the fire and building codes. The quiet between 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. It says the short-term rental permit could be revoked for violations and any conditions imposed by code enforcement officer. Now that would mean, you know, the septic or whatever he would see that's wrong. And if you find that's invasive, if you've already done it, then it wouldn't even apply to you. And then on the permit, the number of sleeping rooms you have, that the rules and regulations are posted. It does call for like a map of the property, so someone isn't trespassing, so they know where their property line is, because that is a pretty big issue, the trespassing part. Off-street parking is provided, garbage removal has been arranged for, the house number is visible from the street. The permit is posted within 5 feet of the main entrance, so people can see that you have a permit, that are renting. Any rules that you create is hanging there for them to see. Like I know that there are people in here that have their own rental rules for their tenants to follow. And then the quiet maintained between 10 and 7. And then the other part that I think people do find a bit more strict and offensive is the part about all the inspections. This one is, the short-term rental permit should be obtained prior to using it as a short-term rental, and I had written in pencil, 35 properties listed prior to the moratorium may continue until the permit's obtained, so they don't have to start all over. Can I ask you what page you're on? I'm sorry, I'm Amber Morris. I'm just wondering where you are in the document. I'm on page 2 right now. Okay, thank you. And then I had read off of this permit application. The fact whether or not it's going to be transferable, if somebody were to sell the home, does it go with the owner or does the buyer start all over? Now in this one, that Warrensburg has the new buyer starts all over with a permit application. And we had discussed that it would go with the property, but apparently that isn't really appropriate as far as the county. They say that when a new buyer comes in, they apply for the short-term rental permit as the prospective owner, and that it's conditioned upon the closing. And then if we were gonna limit how many, I wrote in pencil and availability, they might be placed on a waiting list. So if we just chose to have like a certain amount of them.
I got a question. That's the biggest problem I find is, how do you pick a number and why, let's say residents currently, like myself, my wife, I'm Lewis, by the way. And let's say we move on, okay? And our kids want to maintain it as a Airbnb or whatever in the future. If they're not on the list, they can't do that, so that they can't afford to run that property and maintain that property for their families.
Well, they'd be
If they take
inheriting
it on
it,
the list.
they'd be inheriting it or buying it? Because
They
this would be a new
inherited,
owner.
inherited.
Yeah, so.
But if we haven't started it as a short-term rental,
Oh, and they wanna do it
and
in
then
the
let's just say
future.
to be able to keep it in the family, they want to start some sort of a short-term rental to maintain, to pay the bills.
Mhm.
If there is a list, a limit, and I'm sure other people might want to take that same choice. If there is a limit on how many, 25, 50, 150, I don't know what number you pick, and how do you pick that? What if in the future people change their mind and want to do it that way? They can't do it, they can't afford to maintain that property. How do you put a limit on that? You put restrictions, I understand that.
Mhm.
Restrictions of some sort may limit people to want to go through that,
Right.
right? And maintain a certain quality of that property. But if you say, no, we're gonna stop this at 50, no more than 50, what about all the other people that might want to do that in the future?
Yeah.
Are you talking about moratorium?
No.
Yeah,
No,
Well,
they're
not-
talking about
just a limit of how many
A limit of
short-term
how
rentals we
many.
can have in town. I
certain
mean,
number.
that's something we haven't really talked much about
It's
tonight.
been mentioned a couple of times, but
That's a moratorium. You're limiting the number of people.
No.
It's a temporary halt.
Making you stop it.
Well, there have been people who requested that. They said, well, we
Well,
think
how do you
maybe there should
pick
be
that
so
number?
many.
and why do you pick a number? How could you restrict somebody that wants to run a business that way?
How many would you like to see in town? That's the question.
It's not up to me.
Well,
Not to me.
apparently you must be concerned if you're asking, I mean.
I think what Lou's suggesting is he doesn't want his right to be able to have an Airbnb
Right, in the
property.
future, and I'm sure there's a lot of residents might want to do that in the future. I don't know.
Michelle, you can next.
I'm just trying to look at the other side, is should we limit the number of maple houses we have in town versus short-term rentals? I'm just putting it out there as, we have to be careful of what we limit
Right.
people's way to make income. And should we say that a maple house is doing really well and they can't sell it to the next person to do really well as a maple house, or a company that wants to buy it to produce maples? So I'm just saying, we gotta be really careful when we start imposing these numbers.
Right.
Is one of the concerns that Thurman could attract such a short-term vacation rental investors that the population of Thurman would be dwarfed by potentially the population of short-term rental occupants? Is that part of the concern of wanting to put a number on it?
Yes.
Yes.
Well, I'm concerned about that. I would, and it isn't short-term rentals. I'm more concerned about large tracts of land being divided into very small parcels and
That's a
having the
that's a different
contradiction.
issue. That's a whole different issue,
That's a zoning thing.
Well,
right? That's a zoning issue.
but that's what's attracting them. It's the short-term rental availability
Today.
that is
But as the
attracting
town,
the
you can restrict
investors.
that.
Doesn't the county have a
You can
limit, so
restrict
one
that.
per property now, or?
No, I checked on that and I had been told that originally.
Yeah.
And I called the new county treasurer and I said, I was told that, but I don't see it in any of the county rules. And they've looked and the lawyer got involved, the county lawyer helped, and, that does not exist. I was given incorrect information when they said that.
I guess it really doesn't matter if they can subdivide the property anyway.
Well, that goes back to the land use, the zoning and planning.
Well, if somebody wants to build a duplex, that's two on one piece of property, right?
Yeah.
Or have three units in a nice residential area, or a rural area. Are we gonna restrict that? Is there a restriction on it?
I don't
Is there
know. I
regulation?
don't know if
I think the only zoning we have is the 3-acre minimum lot size per residence.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And APA zoning, which we don't administer.
right.
You raised an interesting question. You said something about how many short-term rentals we could have in town, and whether people were concerned about being overrun by short-term rentals. I guess my question is that really a problem, or is it a perceived problem that people are afraid of? Or is it something that's really in motion? Is it really happening? I called our assessor's office today just to kind of get some numbers. I didn't get any numbers as far as, you know, how many properties in the last X number of years have been converted to short-term rentals. So, I mean, I don't know if that's really a problem, or is it just a perceived problem that people are afraid of?
Well, it
How
is.
many are corporate owned?
It
What's
is-
that?
How many of them are corporate owned
Mhm.
versus individual? I mean, it's one thing if you're a landowner, but when you got corporations coming in here and taking over the town, they're driving our prices up, you know? And the competition for the rest of us.
Well, the
So
town,
there's,
I'm sorry,
go ahead, Don.
the town that, someone had told me about that had the 260 homes, and then they also ended up with 1,100 short-term rentals. What ended up happening there is they had to put in city sewer and water. So, the concern for me is how populated do you want Thurman to be before we're forced to do something like that?
But I think that's back to, we're talking about a zoning issue
Yeah.
versus a short-term
And
rental.
I think some of this is more zoning than short-term rental.
I think we've got the APA, we've got the sewer zoning, we've got the noise ordinance, and we've got the dog ordinance. I think we should really sit down and determine what those can effectively address before we go crazy looking at more regulations. Find out how those can be utilized and enforce them. We've got them. And there's the junk car law out there also.
Right.
Take what we've got. Like I said, people don't know what the APA regulates at this point. See what could possibly be done. And then again, I know I'm repeating myself, but I know I've been at board meetings when the APA had given permission for a subdivision and the board had to approve it. And I've never seen where the board didn't approve it. But take advantage of that option if that's a concern. Don't create more zoning, don't create more regulations until you know what you've got at this point and enforce them. Or if they need to be tweaked, tweak them. And if you're gonna make regulations for short-term rentals, like it was mentioned over there, if you're concerned for their safety, then make it apply to everybody, every homeowner, whether they're a long-term renter or whether they're in their own residence. If you're concerned for safety, make those zoning laws, which I hate and I'm against, but make them apply to everybody, not just the short-term rentals, if you're concerned about their safety and their health.
It would be a local law. Once it goes into effect, you can't signal out short-term rentals. That would be illegal. It has to be town-wide. If the law goes into effect, it's a town law. It won't be just for short-term rentals.
It could be.
What's gonna be
This
the
says
next step?
short-term rentals, this is short-term rental. That's what this is, so.
If we're doing inspection on sewers for the short-term rentals, what about the people that are living in houses that don't have septics? I mean, there's people living in campers,
Right.
dumping their septic on the ground here.
Can I address that?
Absolutely.
The reason I think that it's put in here for the short-term rentals is because you're converting the property for a different use. And there's the potential to go from, 2 or 3 or 4 people living in a house to a much larger number. And I think that's not uncommon in other regulations. I mean, I saw that in my work previously. So all you're trying to do is, you have a house that was built with a septic for one purpose, and now you're converting that property to another purpose. You just want to make sure the septic is adequate. That's all that's in there for.
Okay.
So,
I have just one question.
yes.
Lawrenceburg, when the inspector comes and looks at the apartment, the house, 3 bedrooms, 6 people, that's what your permit's written for, 6 people. You got a house here in Thurman, 4 people, 2 bedrooms, that's what your permit's for, so why do you have 16 people here? Code enforcement guy comes, hey, you can't have 16 people in a 2-bedroom house for a rental, strike 1.
Yeah, but you
So
can
your
only,
septic shouldn't be overwhelmed.
you can only do that if you have regulations. See, we have no regulations.
I know,
so we have
but you
no
see what I'm saying, though, you can't
Yeah.
convert a 4-bedroom house to 16 people living in it.
Right.
There has to be some sort of, that's what your permit's written for, how many bedrooms it is.
But
You
I've
can't
had,
condemn these people that have rentals when you got people living right up here on my street
yeah,
that are living in a trailer, a camp trailer with nothing out there. I'm not trying to get anybody in any trouble, but that's a conflict of interest. Tell me I'm wrong.
well, you're right, you're right.
So, I know those neighbors to those people are complaining about it, but what's getting done about that? But now you wanna come and inspect my system and nobody's complaining about? That's kind of wrong. So where do we start and where do we end?
Yeah.
Regulations. You gotta have it.
You've
Well, they
got
should apply to
regulations.
everybody.
It's what happens.
That's the enforcement.
Victoria wanted to say something.
That's not just short term, that's everybody. And that's what I think we're talking about today. It's not about just short term rentals. It's about
It's
the
zoning.
town and the zoning and people following the rules.
In the back, Victoria wanted to say something.
I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, anybody, that a lot of, like with the violation, is a lot of nervousness is coming from if your renters get you in trouble. What if there was like an addendum that, you know, it's not a guest-based violation, can't count towards it. Like if you have one guest that screws up and that guest can't make it count against you, it has to be something about either the property or whatever. Or at that point, maybe, you know, give the name of that renter out so that other people know and that nobody else has that issue or something like that. Like, just, is that what it is, that we're worried that renters are going to have violations crossed against us?
That's
or-
probably where 90% of your problem's gonna come in, is because, I mean,
The guests,
we're Airbnb, and I know some people in here probably Virgo, but, I mean, we can review our people coming in. She looks at all of them, looks at all the reviews on them, and hopefully you're gonna get a good one. She does the work to review them, but you don't know. I mean, if somebody's gonna, you know, that's what you have your noise ordinance and you get towed for it or something because they're the problem. I mean, it's not necessarily your property, it could be the person in there. I mean, you know, most of the time, we've been lucky. We've had great clients in our places.
Well,
We've
I
had
have
no issues, we have rules, we haven't had a problem.
I have a question for the people that are using Airbnb and VRBO. How do you know that the person who registers to stay there is the actual person who shows up?
They have to give your license info.
Yeah, you can have them prove their
Yeah,
license,
they
they
have
have
to.
to ring camera and verify themselves, you can meet them at the door, you can have your property manager meet
So
them
there
at
is
the
a
door.
way that you know that's who it is. So that was another concern.
And we have regulations, like we don't allow anyone under 24,
Yeah.
25 years old to rent a property, so we don't have underage people
Sure.
renting. We've actually set higher standards for our insurance that we don't allow children under a certain age.
See,
and things
no,
like
that's
that.
great, because that's, you're
Because
self-regulating.
we're self-regulated.
Yes, exactly, you're self-regulating, not everyone is, but you are. And one of my concerns that I'm gonna be asking the attorney, and nobody knew the answer yet, is as a town, and we allow short-term rentals, and we don't have any regulations, but we just allow them, and something happens there, are we legally liable for any of that?
Airbnb and Vrbo have over $1 million policy on every rental, and we carry extra insurance on ours as well. It's $1 million on every rental,
Almost
with
$2
a
million.
minimum limit. Yeah, right?
We have like $3 million covered.
Yeah, we have $3 million because we're on a farm.
But my question is, what if you're not on an Airbnb or VRBO platform?
Good question.
Like, then you're not regulated by Airbnb or VRBO, so you need regulations for the people that want to be off platform.
There's not
Good luck
very
finding reservations
Right,
without
there's not
those
very
platforms.
many.
It's true.
Yeah, we're gonna advertise them. If it was that simple, we wouldn't have to pay VRBO, we wouldn't be a piece of it.
And Randy, and you asked what was kind of offensive for me, like looking at that $300 on that application fee. Vrbo's already beating us up. We're already paying quite a bit to them. We're already paying extra insurance so that we don't lose our farm if somebody gets hurt. We're already paying for increased garbage costs. We're already paying for cleaning. We're already paying for a lot of things. So what we make is very limited, and especially when you're seasonal, it's a very short season too. So to also pay to get inspected, pay to get permits, it starts adding up. And we're already, we're collecting occupancy tax, we're taking care of that. It's a lot of extra paperwork, and it's just a lot for someone who, myself, I already work full-time, and I do this on the side to help pay our taxes. So just another thought to keep in your mind.
So one thing we could have though is not even charge for the permit. I mean, why do we even need to charge for the permit? We could, all I really wanna get out of it is who is doing it, so I know if someone complains, where is it? Because I honestly only know of a few people. I don't know all 35 locations or if there are more. And when somebody complains, I wouldn't even know where to go. And like I mentioned to one person, if your house was on fire, I wouldn't know who to call.
So I think what you're proposing, and I'm just throwing this out there, I'm just thinking out loud, you're talking more about a registration system where, the short-term rental owners would register their property, And as far as regulation goes, it wouldn't be done in the form of a permit. We would just have town-wide regulations that they would have to abide by.
Yeah. They could fill something like this out and not even have a fee, and we just have it on file.
Do we already have an officer for the town? Am I understanding
Code
this correctly?
enforcement?
Code enforcement?
Yeah,
It's a town person, not a county level. So who is this person?
Richard Chase,
Okay, so,
Is he part-time?
yes.
and what's
As
his
needed.
responsibility now and job description? I mean, just, I know nothing about this, so I'd like to.
Well, right now, he would enforce, like, someone's car parked in the road in the way of the highway, he goes out and talks to them. He would enforce the noise ordinance, and he could enforce the, more than 2 cars unregistered, or whatever law we have on the books. He has the law manual of what we do have on the books, so he can enforce any of that.
It seems like this would be a huge workload for that one person. If they
Really,
had-
I don't think so, because I think that, a lot of the simple complaints would mostly be maybe a visit. Like if you went to somebody and said, hey, look, your dog's just killed his chickens and that really can't be happening, but who do you tell? Do you tell the tenant or do you tell the person who owns it? Because the person who owns it would be the one you'd want to make sure they knew this was happening. If they're not there, you're there, it's a little different, but if you're not there, and that's happening as a short-term rental owner, you should wanna know that. So you can call them and tell them, hey, look, you know, because like you said, you can kick them out if they're violating your rules.
My question is, you know there's 35, right?
What?
You know there's 35 short-term rentals?
There was before the moratorium, I don't know what, there's more
Okay.
now, but I don't know.
How do you know that though, is my question.
I went to the county and asked them for a list of who
Okay.
they had registered.
Correct.
So you've
So
got
when I
a list.
registered, I had to give the property. Do you know who the owner is of that property?
I don't know how to reach them. I only know the property
So-
address and a name or business name. It may
They
say.
have to have a place you mail taxes to.
Yeah, but I don't know that.
You can get that from Warren County, can't you?
I could
We
probably.
could actually
Well, I'm
get it from our
asking if
assessor's
you, because
office.
you can go and get, what I'm saying is that I like the idea of, you know, maybe having us all register with you. And I get the concern, you know, I wouldn't want my neighbor having people in and not be able to contact, or if their house is on fire or something to that degree. Of course, you should have a contact person. So that, I think that you can get that information from Warren County, mail them a letter, say, this is a you need to fill this registration out right now, so that I have your contact information, and explain it to them. It's not to restrict them or whatever, it's to let them know if their house is burning down, if there's something going on, you wanna be able to contact them, ask them for the information. I have no problem, and I don't know anybody else who's, if you have, I came in and gave you all my
Yeah,
information.
you did.
I'd much
Yeah.
rather have you get my information and know, and if there is something going on, I wanna know. It's my property.
Right.
I don't want them to have raging parties. I don't want them doing these things. I want to be able to maintain and protect my investment.
Exactly.
So I think if we explain it like that, maybe write a letter up and send it to the people that you know. And if they're not following the rules, then you need to go talk to them personally. Warren County can get involved. They have a bed tax. If they're doing Airbnb and they're doing an Airbnb, then why are they not doing the bed tax? That's Warren County. That's not you.
I know, but that's up to them to go after people that aren't
But if
registered.
you know that they're doing it, then you can contact them.
We don't know all of them, but, you
The
know.
ones that you do, I would put Warren County on it. Then you're on it.
Well, they are going to get more involved.
Yeah, Warren County's already doing that.
Yeah, they're
Right.
They've
going
got
to.
a service,
yes.
they paid for a service that scans all the ads and then compares it with the county's list.
Yeah, they stopped it and now they're talking about starting it again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that is gonna help a lot to regulate what we're looking to do.
Mhm.
And I think that the people that are doing it right, the ones that are here today,
Yep.
that's my big thing is, where's everybody that has a problem?
Mhm.
We're here, we're fighting, we're saying, hey, we wanna protect everything, we wanna do what you want us to do.
Right.
We are respectful enough to make time to be here, whether they have kids or not.
Mhm.
I had to work, I was late, I made sure I was here,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's how I
Gloria?
feel.
What if there was, because I know that everybody was able to happily find my information on the government website. If we had a little tab on there that was for rentals or short-term rentals or rentals in general in a tab for short-term and long-term with, the contact information of the owner and just like the address that is the address that they rent with a phone number and an email address. So that it was not so hard to find, because just like nobody wants to jump through these hoops to rent something, nobody wants to jump through hoops to find out who they need to tell when they're mad.
No,
I think there's probably gonna be a privacy concern with that when you put that information out for the whole world. I think for some people, it's more appropriate for the neighbors to have that contact information because they're the ones gonna be affected. I don't know that the rest of the town needs that information. That, maybe I'm wrong,
Would
but
any owner of a rental be upset about having their information posted for people to get a hold of them on a public space?
I think,
Yes.
I think
And
some,
also, then someone knows how to tell if it's empty. You
Yeah, I
might
don't
be
like
giving
that.
yourself
I don't
open
want
up to,
that.
Yeah, we don't
That's
get
why
our
Airbnb
address
protects
out,
us.
Virgo.
yeah.
You don't get our address until
No,
7 days before the
exactly.
rental.
Exactly.
So you put yourself open to theft and everything else if they know your thing's sitting there empty.
right.
Yeah, I don't like that.
Yeah.
That's an invasion of privacy.
Yeah, that, I don't think.
I have a question for some of the short-term rental owners. The regulation that's here in front of us that we're talking about talks about short-term rental owners. But what about short-term rental operators? Because I know from personal experience of ones where somebody just operates the property, but they don't actually own it.
I'm one.
Okay.
Yeah, we have one across the street from us. It's a friend who owns it.
Mhm.
They own 3 houses, one here, one Newburgh, one in another location. They don't visit much anymore. They rent it a few times a year. We look over, we're the caretakers.
Okay.
But we meet the people when they come in, we make sure that everything's okay, and we maintain the same quality that we maintain as our own rental.
And trust me, the one night they made noise, they shut it down real quick.
By 10:02, they were down.
I was just curious if that was something that was common or if it was
It's
just.
very common.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, that is cool.
So my name's Nicole, Longham, Philadelphia. I'm from Hadlock area, so I'm not a familiar face, maybe some of you. I have the role of property manager and cleaner in the area. I do work with quite a few of your Thurman Airbnbs, or I have, or I look forward to. There is a big responsibility that falls onto my shoulders, whereas if I come in, in the middle of the night and I get a phone call, now I'm getting up and coming up here, check your rental at midnight because you live far away. That to me has been my perfect job. That's something like I would stay at home on my homeschool. This is giving me an opportunity to grow my life, grow my children's lives, grow girls. I have 10 girls that work for me during the summertime. You've given them jobs and opportunities to do these things, to help caretake your houses, to help maintain, as a business, I own my own business, own my own house. I understand where you guys are coming from, both sides of the fence. We did a hands-off their homesteading beforehand, kind of same, we're hearing the same things here, as I've heard every town board I've been to. 100%. So I just wanted to add that, and again, in place, you have your good heads here. Take advantage of that. Take advantage of the people that are like me, that want to come in to be here to help you guys keep the Airbnbs running freely. If you have a problem and you call me and say, hey, can you go check on these people in the middle of the night? Why don't they got a fire going on, they're drinking? We're there for you. Somebody from my team is going to be there within an hour. And so that's, and that's a big thing. I think I kind of waited to see how everything was going to go before I spoke up. But that's something I would like to also reach out, and say I do have 3 right now that I'm taking care of seasonally in the area that I have no problem, being a contact, trying to help out. It is hard. I know in my personal area where we are, we're on a lake. There's a lot of Airbnbs. There's a bigger company I won't mention that runs a lot in the area. They have no disregard. They do not care if their people are splashing in the water at 2 a.m., running up and down our road on 4-wheelers and their golf carts they've rented at 3 a.m. There needs to be certain things set. First, say the owner, property manager should be taking care of it at first. If it falls under, say, a fire, there's something crazy, 911 should be the neighbor's first contact, as far as that goes. As myself, I can't speak for other property managers, but I like to go to the neighbors, give them my business card, and I also host too, so it's not just,
Right.
that, but I like to go to the neighbors, let them know, hey, this is my name, this is my number, I'm there, if you need me, call me, please, because I don't want a bad guest in my place looking bad. I think I work for the ones that had the shooting, because I happened to come up on something like that, and there's shells all over the porch. Now, what am I supposed to do as a property manager? You know, do I call law enforcement if we have people shooting? No, we X them out, they're not allowed back. You know, we've reported, hey, this is what's going on, we know we did this on our property, we have trail cams.
How do you know someone else isn't renting to them though? You don't know that.
Also, what's that
We-
Airbnb?
Their Airbnb does kick people off the platform, they will.
Oh, really?
Oh, they will, they will 100%. And they do flag your conversation, like if you're writing back to the host and somebody says, oh, we wanna do this, they will say like, this looks like a party, do not accept it. Or this is suspicious, this
Yes,
is their
they've
best
done that
first,
with
this
me.
is their first time these people have
Yep.
rented, they've been an issue before. You could read the other reviews that say she's put down. There are certain things in play for us to be able to say, whoa, let's not rent to this person.
That's true, all that is so true.
That's all I have to say.
And here, as somebody, as an investor, we are, I mean, we're not out of towners, we live in place where I have cameras, okay? He's on the camera like it's his job. But, I mean, we know the thermostat, we know what's going on. Why wouldn't we? This is our property, this is money that we are investing, it's our livelihood, this is how we're making money. We're not gonna let people come up here and destroy it and disturb our neighbors and do any of that, that's not what we want at all. So I agree with you, yes, people do need to be able to contact us.
Yeah.
I have no problem with that, does anybody else have a problem with that?
No.
I have no problem with registering with you, letting you know what's going on, any of that.
I've had people find me on the Airbnb platform based on the rental thing and write to me, hey, I'm your neighbor, can blah, 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 this needs to be taken care of. So there, I mean, there's a lot of different avenues that are, we do have a lot of regulations, which she said, you know, between Vibro and Airbnb, that we are already jumping through, just to make sure that our guests are going to be happy, respectful.
All right, so what I'm getting out of all of this now is maybe what we need to do is have registration and no fees, I mean, you know, just a registration form so we know who to reach and come up with some rules that we can put into place that are enforceable, because that is a big problem, what happened, if we can't enforce it.
Well,
If
and
it's
there's
not a
always
law, we
ordinance
can't
and the
enforce
dog
it.
thing, those are two big things. Once you start getting those little steps in, and they go for the whole town, but they are, you know, we know that you have one incident, but we wanna make sure those other things aren't gonna happen, and that's good, because we didn't have a lot of that either. And then once you start putting in little bits and demanding a little bit more respect from the unruly Airbnb owners, you know.
I think if the neighbors felt they had someone to call when they have an issue, that would help a lot, because they don't, and they're having this issue and they feel they're just having to deal with it. They just have to deal with the trespasser, they just have to deal with the dogs killing their, they don't understand or know who they can call. And yeah, they could call 911, but then when my house was robbed, it took me all day to get a sheriff to my house. You know, it's not like you're gonna get immediate assistance when you call, but if you were to call, say, if you were to call me and then I knew who the owner was and I called you, you would be able to get in touch with your tenant immediately, because we can't reach the tenant, we don't know who they are. So the process has to go through, you know, from the person having the problem to someone else, code enforcer, me, somebody, town board member, to the owner, to the tenant, and that would resolve, I think, most of what is wrong.
I think that's the answer then.
Victoria?
So, back to the register thing with it, I see the error in my thought process before with the public form. I didn't even, so what about an internal registration form that the town board or whoever clerk has access to of the names and numbers of the people? If that is something that everybody's okay with, what would be your preferred method of, would you want your number given out to the person that needs it, or take their number and have it forwarded to you for you to call them so that it doesn't get?
I would come from the supervisor or whoever's in charge. I wouldn't want you giving my number to somebody else.
Okay, that's what I'm wondering.
Yeah,
So
I
like
would-
you would want them
I
to
would want
collect the
her,
phone number of
yes.
the person that wants to get a hold of you to give it to you so you can make that call specifically. So now what if we have somebody that we've gotten a number or whatever and given it to somebody that has an Airbnb or Vrbo and they're not calling? Is that something that we can, you know?
You mean someone complain? Oh, you mean if
Like,
I...
what if we're not getting a response to a complaint? What if we give our number to you or whoever's in charge of the book, and that goes to an Airbnb or a Verbo owner and said, hey, can you call this person, they're having a problem, and that person that is having a problem never gets a phone call. Now what do we do? Now, is that gonna be part of the
Well, that could be
rule
one of
that
the,
you
one of
have
the
to
three
respond to your
violations.
complaints?
Yeah,
That
It
could
sounds
be
like
one
an
of the three.
association, you guys.
that would be one violation. You got a phone call next day, hey,
I moved out of gated places. I left Connecticut. I don't wanna do that anymore.
Like a cartel.
I don't wanna live in a HOA or whatever they are.
But if somebody was having a problem, would you wanna like call them and like say, hey, what was up, what happened, you know, and know what it was? I mean, and not just have the people that are actually living here being ignored if they have like a legitimate issue.
It's kind of a
Every
nuance.
issue goes with
Right,
every
and that's what I'm
You
saying,
maybe
like,
not necessarily need to have a registry of them for the sense of this.
With Airbnb, we have 24 hours. Something, our guest calls us immediately, bam, 24 hours. If we do not, then we get reported.
Yeah.
You
If-
have
yeah,
to
if
respond.
If your guest calls you, but what if
Yeah.
somebody that lives here?
You realize we're all rated as renters.
What?
We
All
get
of us
rated
get rated.
Oh, you do?
Oh,
Yeah, sure. Because if somebody's going out to rent, you're gonna look at it and say, what's the rating on this place? What's the rating on the host?
100%.
You know?
Mhm.
So you're trying to maintain that 5-star level.
Right.
I mean, the ones that are going for these low-rated people, you know, are the ones that don't care. They wanna just go and have the rate,
Right.
you know, so.
It's kind of a nuanced conversation too, because you have to look at the, how things are set up. There are some that are owner or manager on site, and those have to be looked at differently than someone who has, 10 of them and has never set foot in the county. Things have to be looked at more in depth like that. And also there's, in addition to the regulations by Airbnb and VRBO and the rating systems, how we can deplatform guests and how they can give us bad ratings and so forth, there's also software available, like one of them is Room Monitor, and if you have a larger capacity dwelling, if you have that device in there, it looks like a little smoke alarm, and it alerts you the minute the decibel reading in the inside or outside gets above a certain level. And or if it detects smoke, it goes to your phones if you have the app. So you have the ability, if you do have a larger capacity property, to monitor it even if you are off-site. So I feel like the owners are pretty good at self-regulating. So I don't think there needs to be a layer of town government saying, here are some extra rules. We want a good product, we want it to be safe, and we are monitoring what goes on.
Not
with the
everyone.
property. Then
Those are the ones.
take out the unlawful people.
Through this zoning, maybe we can do that.
Yeah, that's what I.
Say that again, I'm sorry.
Through the other laws, the noise ordinances, the dog ordinances, use what we already
Right.
have to start weeding these people out.
Fair enough.
yeah,
I agree.
3 strikes and you're out. I can't rent a place here anymore.
Yeah, yeah.
That's no joke, it's really truthful.
Where do we find all of these rules? Because I'd love to read more about the dog ordinance, because I cannot walk on my own street because dogs come up and bite me and my dog is on.
Really?
So,
Mud Street.
yeah, we live on Mud Street, but I was just wondering if there's a place online where we can read all of our rules.
around that park, you can't have your dog running loose.
Yeah.
No, thank
You
you.
can't have your dog running loose here, and if your dog is running loose and it's on someone's property with animals, that homeowner has the right to shoot your dog
But the difficulty,
legally.
Can I walk my dog and shoot other dogs?
We also have the animal control officer, Brett Holmes. And if you have loose dogs near you, you can call him and he'll come and pick them up.
Is he ever available?
Yeah?
I
Yeah.
called numerous times, dogs on Tippecanoe, and I've never seen the man yet.
Well, he is out there because I just helped him process a ticket for somebody with loose dogs, so he did do it. He wrote the ticket and they have court soon, and.
We have a new dog catcher, correct?
What?
Recently, new dog catcher.
No, it's been bred for a long time,
Many years.
a couple of years anyway, that I know. After, Dexter,
Yeah, the Dexter was mostly.
Yeah.
I forgot.
So I think we're getting off topic. So
Yeah.
where do we go from here? I mean, I think, first of all, anything we propose or whatever has to go through our town attorney to make sure it's, gonna stand up.
right,
So I think, at some point, if we're gonna modify this, adopt this, whatever we're gonna do, we have to talk about, you know, what we're gonna do with this. So are we gonna do that at the next town board meeting, or how are we gonna do this?
Are you gonna request, possible regulations that, VRB owners and citizens would be amenable to adopting?
I would like that. I would agree
Are you
with
gonna
that.
solicit input, or are you saying let's modify something that already legally stands? It's a question.
I'm not sure what already legally stands that we can modify.
I mean, the Warrensburg law already
The
stands in
one, okay,
Warrensburg.
the Warrensburg law.
So you're like, hey, this thing already has legs,
Mhm.
let's modify it, or are you saying, let's start from scratch and solicit, what type of regulation would be amenable to the current residents and VRBO hosts?
I think you should get, like, the lady over here said, get together with the owners that are doing things the way they're supposed to do it.
Yeah, I would like
Come up
to do
with
that.
Open it to all.
I'd take this a step further. I think that we have a list of the the short-term rental properties in town. And I think through the assessor's office, we have contact information where tax bills are mailed. And that we should mail them a notice and set up a meeting and invite all short-term rental owners and all other property owners and any
I
stakeholders.
personally think the short-term rental owners ought to submit them to us, so we don't have to do that anymore.
No, I'm saying, what I'm saying is invite them
We're
to
happy
a
to do
meeting so that everybody has notice, because I think this meeting, we do have a fair representation of short-term rental owners here, but not all of them got notice of this meeting. So it probably would be fair to do that. I think the other thing everybody needs to be aware of is if we do actually propose to adopt any kind of regulation or a town law, we will have to do a public hearing. And at that point, everybody has the ability to have input into the process. So before the town board adopts it.
Probably would get that yellow pad of paper going around, get everybody's name who's got a place right now in this room. That'd be a start.
I mean, if you want notification, I mean, that's a start, but I think we've got the list. We know the property owners. So all we gotta do is match up the addresses with them.
We know a business name, we don't know, I guess we can call the assessor.
We know from the tax rolls, we know who owns the property.
So an invitation to participate would be great, I think everyone would like the chance to, be included in the process.
Yes.
But the challenge becomes, for some people that are not wicked local, how are they gonna participate in the process as being hosts of short-term rentals? It's just something to think about. That's
Yeah,
all.
I think that's a fair question, and I think they could submit a written, response.
So that is
Either
acceptable.
comments, questions, whatever, things to think about, concerns they have. I think that's fair.
What about my question is, once we, maybe sit down and talk and figure out what's gonna be reasonable for short term and everybody's okay with it, then we have the open meeting for everybody. Who determines, it's the board that's gonna take the vote, that's gonna determine the law and what's gonna be in effect, right?
Yes.
It's
That's
the
correct.
board.
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to get that clarified. to
So what I'm
see
thinking is,
what's
why don't
going
I
on.
just tell you all my email, and you send me your contact information, and I'll make a short-term rental group email, so that I can send one straight out to everybody.
That's perfect.
It's supervisor@thurmanny.gov. And that way everybody gets it at one time, and
But the folks that aren't here, they will be notified through mail?
I think they should be.
I think they should be too.
I think everybody should.
would it just be like a mass mailing to all landowners in Thurman?
No, I think that we can identify the short-term rental owner properties and do the mailing to them. But as far as property owners or residents and people within Thurman, we'll rely on other avenues of notification, either through the town website, through social media, through legal notice in the paper, or maybe even an article in the newspaper.
That was what, I didn't know about this until somebody told me about it. I don't check the website, I'm not on Facebook, I did not receive anything telling me about any of this stuff going on. Thank goodness I had somebody said, hey, there might be something going on with this, that's why I'm here. I wouldn't have known.
That's why I think we need to do a
We
mailing
need
to
to
all
have
short-term
something
rental
mailed
properties.
to us. We own these properties, we have to be notified what's going on.
But if they don't know we're doing it,
Well, the thing is,
gotta read the signs.
I mailed a letter to Warrensburg and it took 6 weeks to get to the town hall of Warrensburg from here.
Yeah, but you'll post outside when you had the meeting anyway.
So, are we looking at like kind of doing like a workshop of short-term rental, like kind of bringing everybody together? Is that what we're looking?
Yeah.
that's what tonight was intended to be, but I think we just don't have all the stakeholders here.
Right.
I agree.
I agree.
If you can get the list of people and mail out a very short registration form, just asking them for their information, I mean, some of them will send it to you, some of them won't. Ask for their phone number, their address, their email, and get that registration form started. Find out what you need to do to be able to enforce the laws that we've already got in place. And then determine the legitimate concerns, legitimate ones, not man-made ones, not knee-jerk reactions, and then go from there. But you need to find out the concerns before you can get any sort of meeting going, because there's no sense making rules, making regulations that's gonna stifle anybody if it's not needed, if there's no concern.
Well, the most concerns that I've seen is the loose dogs, the trespassing, people going into other people's garages and rummaging
That's all
through their
stuff that you can
things.
regulate.
Well, that's trust.
That's all stuff that you can regulate.
there's one other thing, you know,
It's
Yeah.
trespassing.
These are
Hold
the
on,
laws.
everybody, we get,
send this meeting.
just so you know, if we install any laws that are gonna end up closing somebody down, or putting them out, a lot of people already have reservations for the whole year.
Yeah.
And we're obligated to, you know, our contract with VRBO, Airbnb, we've got deposits into them. It's not gonna be a simple, you know,
I don't think any of them would put somebody out.
yeah, well, I'm just saying, you know, just keep
Just to
that in
keep it
mind.
in mind, I mean, we've got reservations coming in.
I think if you got the information that you need, let's start with that, at least notifying everybody, get the information that you need as far as who owns it, who to contact, whether it's a management company or whatever. I think that we're gonna be so ahead of the game. If we still have problems after that, people are still calling you, then we all meet and decide what rules that we need to do.
I really like the idea of someone being able to call the code enforcer or me and then call the owner of the property and
Absolutely.
let them self-regulate, because it is, from what I hear, very important to you to have good star
Absolutely.
ratings.
It is.
So, and I do like your thing, 3 strikes and you're done, and
I do have a question. The next meeting you have for vacation rentals will be regular personnel from the town be allowed to come?
yeah.
Okay. I don't have a rental here, but I have one in Warrensburg I'm preparing to rent. But I am gonna buy one here eventually, because I live here.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd like to be in on that conversation.
Oh, no, it'll be open. It'll be an open meeting. This is even an open meeting.
Yeah, that's why I'm here.
Just trying to get a piece of paper here. For anybody that's like at a distance, because the only issue I see with like, mailing in like comments or concerns or questions is, sometimes there's like an additional question after the answer that wasn't thought of before. Would a Google meeting, like post a Google Meet and have somebody monitor the screen for extra questions?
or Zoom.
Be helpful. Zoom or Google Meet, whichever one.
Right.
So that more than one person could participate from a distance, so they don't have to keep trekking back up here. Be helpful to anybody?
Oh,
We-
yeah.
I think we should investigate that.
Yeah,
Figure
I
out
think that would be a
if we
good
can
idea.
do, if we can do that, yeah. Yep. Personally, the more people we can include in this process, I think the better product we're gonna get in the end.
I don't think it was ever intended to make anybody angry.
I've got something very off topic if I can. TCA, which is Thurman Community Association, Lisa's president of it, but we do have Thurman weekends coming up in March, this coming weekend. We'd love to have your addresses so we can put our rap cards and our directories in them for your guests. If you can somehow get a hold of Lisa.
My biggest thing is I like to be part of the community and I like to bring money to the community too. I'm making money, I wanna make money for everybody here. I like putting brochures out, I like having all that stuff, I put maple syrup out, I do things because it's to help everybody here. We're all trying to help each other, and that's what it's about.
mean, these people are spending their money in our small businesses, in
Yeah.
our areas. I know, Borean's another one, stoplight town, have a lot there, so I've seen, you see a little bit, a bit of influx as far as that goes, the tourism isn't all bad.
Yes, I would love to give you right information.
Yes.
Okay,
You good for now?
thanks a lot, this has really been good, so.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Okay. The absence of
Hey Joey, I didn't know that was you, because you're here.
I don't know.
I always talk about it. Best milk I would drink.